right, it's 6:30, and I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole. Uh, Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Pasalacqua,
Here.
Paul, Rodriguez, Storr,
Present.
Straub,
Here.
Summers,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Thorsland,
Here.
Banich Theranot,
Here.
Williams, Wolken, Carter,
Here.
Coert, Esri,
Here.
Furtado,
Here.
Goss,
Here.
Harper,
Here.
King,
Here.
Lokshin,
Here.
McGuire,
Here.
Michaels, Patterson.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Could I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Jenny, second. Mary? All right, are there any alterations? Lokshin and King. Yeah, sorry. All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Oh,
It's not an alteration, but just, I wanted to point out on the agenda items distributed that it's actually item 7C, that the policy, that the Highway Department conference room is referring to on the actual agenda. Those numbers don't quite match up. So in case you're trying to go back and forth between each packet, just wanted to point that out.
all right. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, next I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of the October 11th, 2022 regular meeting. Thorsland? Taylor? All right, are there any suggestions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, next we have public comment. I have Brian Schlutter.
Do I have to state my name, address, like usual, or no? No. Okay. All right. Yesterday, we had the elections, Northern Champaign County. Made national news. Got hacked. That's the story. Got hacked. Got hacked. Couldn't vote. Machines were shut down. 10:05, machines shut down. Standing room only. Northern part of Champaign County has voting locations all combined and condensed into a little room, a little bit bigger than that over there. People were amazed, like, why are we voting in such a small location? Those were the comments all day. All day. Can't address those. It's not my point. So, we got hacked. What was a contingency plan here, folks? What if we didn't get the IT going? What if we didn't get the computers up and running again? This is what took place. People were in line, ready to vote. System shuts down. First, this is what was delivered to Compromise Township. 1,200 ballots. They look like this. They might have had a barcode up for an election judge to sign. I don't know what they look like, but they're blank. They go through a printer. They printed them. I was amazed to learn that yesterday. It took about 2 or 3 hours to learn how the system worked. I was amazed. Anybody have a computer, printer, have problems with software, connectability? Yeah, it happens all the time. You're going to have this, okay? You're going to have it all the time. We're going to have it every year. We got, 6 hours, 7. We got 13 hours to rely on technology to work. So, here's the problem. There's no contingency plan. Illinois statute. Took a long time for me to find it yesterday. 10 ILCS-5/16-5. You know what it states? When the voting stops and the electronic ballot process stops, there is a requirement to have paper ballots present. Everywhere in this county yesterday, everywhere I called, no pre-printed ballots were at any voting locations anywhere. Had this cyber attack been 100% successful in this whole entire county, no one would have voted. The polls would have closed. 7 p.m., I'm sorry, you can't vote. The end. That's from the Illinois State Board of Elections. It's the way it is. It's a law. It's the statute. That's the statute. It's the way it works. So we better figure something out. The problem is empty ballot. We have to connect it to the internet to print it. Why not put a thumb drive in it? Why isn't that able to print? I don't understand why it's got to be done that way. Listen, we got a drop box. Oh, and then by the way, the paper ballots, according to the Illinois State Board of Elections, when the paper ballots are handed to the individuals in line, they fill them out, they fold them, they put them in a drop box that is locked. That is allowed. They got to be counted by hand. That is placed in the building. Supposed to be present. Don't know if it was there, but we were required to have that. Wasn't there. Maybe we don't know. I'm not pointing fingers. Maybe, honestly, no one knew these things. But we better. If it's your job to know it, you better know it. If you don't know it, you better hire somebody to know it for you. This could have been a disaster yesterday. And it was in our area. We experienced it. So the news media, the national news media, it was a hack, it was a hack. No. It was the fact that we couldn't, they said on the news that the ballots couldn't be counted. No, the ballots couldn't be printed to be counted. That's worse yet. That's the story. It wasn't, oh, we got hacked. No, we couldn't even print the ballots to vote yesterday. But that's not in the news anywhere. Anywhere. That's the problem. And as far as I know, I don't think it's legal what took place. McLean County spoke to the election people last night working late. Because they had a similar problem last year, they took it upon themselves to print all paper ballots for every voting location. They had them there. They had them at the buildings. I asked him why. Just in case. Just in case. Called another county. It's on their website. On election day, we will have paper ballots in place at these locations, which are early voting locations for that district. It's done here, it's done here, it's done, but it ain't done here. I don't know why. That's something you guys are going to have to ask. Were any laws broken? That's not for me to decide. We have a wooden box that's 100 years old in our building. It's finger jointed, it's this big. You put the ballots in it. It has came back and forth to this county for over 100 years. It's still got a lock on it. It's got a key in it. It's brass. It has been beat up, if that box could talk. And you know what? That box served us well for over 100 years. And if technology is going to be present here, it needs to work. And if it's going to work, it needs to be checked. And you have to have checks and balances to make sure this stuff works. It didn't work. And I'm going to guess it ain't going to work coming up in the future. And I already know from the previous times we've had issues with the motor voter registration. Well, it's a glitch. Well, we're always having a glitch. Not pointing fingers. But the point is, we have to have a way to address the problems. It was very close to a very bad event. Why am I so upset? I get to the building. We have a lady with a cane that can barely make it up, a slight incline, with her husband, a Vietnam veteran, that goes to the building, and she is so weak and fragile she can't pull the door open. She opens the door, sees the people inside, and she is going to turn around and leave. Because the lady told her, we're waiting, we can't vote. She says, I can't, how long? 30 minutes. I can't wait that long. I said, ma'am, you need to vote. She voted. But I don't know how many people got turned away, and they were told to come here. It was broke here too. 25 miles. We're supposed to go 25 miles to vote.
All right, thank you for your
Don't
comment.
worry.
Is there anybody else from the public who would like to make a comment? All right, moving on. For communications, we do have a Champaign County Juvenile Detention Center out-of-county boarding information. I don't believe there's anybody here from JDC. Does anybody have any comments about this? Mr. Tattle?
We just wanted to follow up. Michael Williams just let us know what we, if you remember, as a body, approved $200,000 for the unfortunate circumstances that we had to, due to staffing constraints, board people out. And so I did think it was, he sent all of this to you as a memo. I think some of us even got it as like paper. But just that we had approved $200,000 in by his estimates through, for 100 days, by his estimates, it cost $137,306.50, and on average, he had 10.4 minors that were boarded outside of Champaign County, and the program fulfilled the services that he intended in that it gave him time to re-up his staff and give his staff some much-needed breaks. So we approved it as a body. I thought we should, in the public, that we should let everybody know the resolution of that approval.
All right, thank you. Mr. Thorson?
Thank you. Friday is the 11th. It's Veterans Day. Take this opportunity to thank all the veterans that work for the county and all the veterans in general. My father's a veteran. I have students that are veteran. One is 80 years old, another is 28. So it's a broad span of people, and I'm sure we have a way to get a list of the veterans that work here at the county, and I'd like to get that if possible, so that we can talk about it later on, if that's available. But thank you all for your service, and I think everyone should think about that on Friday.
Chris?
Thank you. Just a update on the helicopter transient electromagnetic geophysics that's going to be flown over most of Champaign County. The media day has been moved to November 21st. The helicopter will be flying about 100 feet above the ground and with kind of exotic looking antennas. And just want to remind everybody about this coming event. And I hope that some of the county board members can come to the media day and see the equipment and meet some of the people. I was reminded, it's going to be at Frasca Field. The last I heard, it was going to be around midday, and a press release is forthcoming.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody else have any other communications? All right, moving on. Policy personnel appointments.
Thank you, Chairman Patterson. We have a presentation from the Gallagher Consulting Group here for a workforce study that was contracted some time back. Madam County Executive, do you wish to do any introductory remarks?
Hi, yes, I do want to make a couple comments. Tonight, we have Karen Blackwell and Mike Verdun here. They are from Gallagher Consulting. Gallagher also provides the benefits consultant for our county, and this is a different branch of their organization that does management consulting for HR services. Karen does sort of general HR things. She did our recruiting retention piece of what we asked her to do, and Mike did the compensation piece. So they're going to combine their presentation tonight and talk you through some of their analysis and results. Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Karen Blackwell. I'm a senior consultant with Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to be here tonight with you commissioners and to present this information. I'm with the Human Resources Consulting practice of Gallagher, and my part of this work was to conduct a recruiting and retention study. And so that is what I'll be presenting. I'll then turn it over to my colleague, Mike, to talk about the compensation study. And then at the end, we will, of course, be open and receive any questions that you have. This is the agenda of what I'm going to cover today, and I am going to try to talk very quickly despite this southern accent. I'm going to try to get in as much as possible in the next 15 minutes. So this is the project approach. These were the components of the project. First, we launched a confidential employee survey. Gallagher pulled it together with the review of the county's HR group. We then talked to human resources and other staff members. We talked to managers. We had focus groups here on site. I conducted 2 different reviews, analytical reviews I'll talk about later. And then, of course, I worked in step with Mike in his research. And so the goals were to report back to the county near-term, long-term ways to improve recruiting and retention, and to identify opportunities to elevate, evolve the recruiting function to support all of the elected officials and their departments. A little about the survey and the focus group. So it was a confidential survey. We administered it, and there were 326 responses, which is about 59%. So that is considered a very good response rate. I was very pleased. The survey had an opportunity for the employees to write freely, and there was a lot of content in the survey. It was great. The focus groups, 3 days here in June, I and some of my colleagues on my team came, and we talked to employees face-to-face. I would say that some of the sessions were well-attended, some were average attended, but the employees that were there had lots to say, so it was very fruitful, these conversations. And then later on, I conducted more virtual focus groups with more employees and with managers. So here are the top themes that came out of the survey, and it also aligned to the focus groups. These are the top 5 themes. I'm going to go a little deeper into 2 out of those 5 themes, compensation, and this is a topic that I heard multiple times and throughout the survey in the focus groups about politics in the workplace. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. The survey had some interesting data come back. First, a measure of an organization's health as it relates to these surveys is, will your employee be an advocate for you? Number 1 question on the survey that will give you that indication is whether they'll refer a family member or a friend to their employer. We asked that question, and about 37% said no, they would not refer. 3% said yes. So as far as retention indicators, we asked 22 of the respondents said that they are likely to leave the county within the next 3 months when we administered the survey this summer. That may not sound like a lot, and nor does 37% on the would you prefer piece to that, but it's something definitely to pay attention to. Next, we asked satisfaction levels. 47% of the respondents said that they were not satisfied, 34% were passive, and 19% said that they were satisfied. 47% is high, obviously. I'm concerned about the 34%. When you have a passive group, needless to say, they could be swayed one side or the other. Something to keep an eye on, of course. Engagement. So this is a very interesting survey piece of data. We explained engagement, which is different from satisfaction. So they're related but not the same. We asked the employees about their engagement level, and 36% said they were engaged. 33% said neutral, passive, and 30% said they were not engaged. So the amount of employees that said they weren't engaged is lower than the satisfaction level, and this is a little unusual. Normally they're pretty close together, satisfaction level, engagement level. But what this tells me is although dissatisfaction was high, but their engagement level was high, is that you have employees that are hanging in there. And this is what I heard back from, the survey responses and the focus groups. They enjoy serving the community here. They enjoy their coworkers. They enjoy what they're doing. But from their day-to-day work, there's a level of dissatisfaction. So the number one theme that I heard from focus groups and from the survey was around compensation. And one of the survey questions was, there was an explanation of overall compensation, meaning this is how your employer helps you pay for health insurance premiums, your retirement benefits, the whole package. What is your feedback? And 36.3% said their compensation total package was poor to very poor. Here's a little more detail around that. So I put these bullet points up here because this gives some context to it. So I heard a lot about inflation, right? Inflation is there, cost of living is high. Also, some of your more tenured employees are feeling salary compression. They've been in the role for a certain time, and they're seeing, workers hired with less tenure not that far away from a compensation standpoint. That's the perception from the feedback that I got. Some employees were giving us feedback that, I get this incremental increase year over year, but my premiums and health benefits increase slightly year over year, and they kind of, wash themselves out, so to speak. The feedback was positive around their health insurance package, but the feedback around compensation was, those two things coinciding. Politics at work. So this is some of the feedback that I got, both from the survey and from the focus groups, and that was employees were saying things such as, some departments are getting things that my department isn't. Some of the feedback was there's some, and the employees used these words, lack of confidentiality. They were gossiping. Leaders were not professional. There was a lack of accountability. And this was a theme. The feedback was, politics is impacting my ability to do my job. Politics and the conflict around that is impacting my ability to work across departments. That was some of the feedback that came back there. So here are a few red flags I wanted to point out. So I heard this theme often, and that was employees felt like appreciation and recognition were declining. There were multiple mentions in the survey that folks were afraid to speak up and say negative things, which is a red flag. You want your employees to feel like they can be very vocal about their situations. And, some employees mentioned, hey, listen, because of our turnover, because we are having a hard time finding talent, our standards are lower now. Employees were skeptical about the survey, meaning many of the comments were like, well, nothing's going to happen after the survey. They had a low level of confidence that any change would occur due to the work study. We heard that often. And then the survey had questions around diversity, DEI, on it. And as a 25-year HR professional, reading between the lines from the survey responses told me that employees they don't have a focus on the importance or have the awareness around DEI and its place in the workplace. So there was a low awareness there, and not a lot of employees understood the importance of why it was even asked on the survey, and so that's a red flag. So the employee and manager focus groups, a lot of similar feedback occurred in those focus groups. Not a lot of notable differences, but with managers specifically, they were, we had a lot of good dialogue around their feedback around what the county could be doing to improve recruiting. And the last bullet is multiple managers, and that's why I put it on this slide, mentioned, hey, listen, our job descriptions are, they need a refresh, they need evolving, they really need updating. I heard that multiple times. So let me speed up here to get through the rest of my content. So bottom line, here are the positive takeaways. Your employees, again, engagement high, satisfaction low, they're hanging in there. They want to see things improve. They enjoy their coworkers, and they enjoy serving your community. That's great. Red flags, again, when I was here on site and talking to employees, frankly, they were feeling overworked, burnt out. Skepticism was high, and it seems like satisfaction is low. And so those are the takeaways. Part of my work was to do what I call a candidate experience assessment, where I did an exercise where in my exercise was I was a law enforcement candidate looking for a job, and I documented all of this research, and the results were, through searches and through looking on the internet, the county is not really front and center. So when candidates are out there looking for instance, law enforcement jobs, the city of Urbana or other, I call them talent competitors, they are in the forefront through social media or just through Google searches or Indeed searches. And so it's hard for your potential talent, to find the county and to apply for jobs. That was the result. We also delved into, as an employer, as an organization, is the county's employer value proposition, is your brand coming through to potential candidates? And the answer is not very well. And so the county has a limited presence on social media platforms. There's not a lot of advertisement as far as job openings. And one thing I wanted to mention here, it's a small data point, but I think it's a really important one from a social media standpoint. Part of my recommendation will be to really take some notes from the private sector in regards to using social media to your advantage, to have accounts, and to, even if you're not going to do anything with them soon, to go ahead and lock down potential profiles and accounts with the county's name, so that they don't get usurped, and it's already happening out there on social media. So recruiting near term, I'm going to go through this really fast. There's some really detailed things here, but they're really important. Sometimes the small things matter. For instance, my near-term recommendations are, invest in the governmentjobs.com bundle, or spend some money on really getting the jobs out there in earnest to fill them. And then, like I said, social media, really pull together a strategy to put your jobs on the internet that way, because your competitors are doing it, your talent competitors, so to speak. Long term, I think there needs to be a recruiting part of the human resources support model. Your manager's feedback was, we want to keep our autonomy around, of course, hiring our positions and making our own hiring decisions, but at the same time, the feedback was clear that they're looking for more support from a recruiting and HR perspective, a balance between those two. So those are just some recommendations there. The HR software is a piece that long-term is going to be a factor. Retention. Where applicable, based on the research that you get, adjust compensation where it's appropriate or makes sense based on the research. And have some transparency around what the county is going to do, even if it's a few years out. Make sure you're keeping that communication open with your employees. That feedback was loud and clear that they're wanting more transparency around that. And during the open enrollment and going forward, going back to your employees' morale and mental health, make sure they understand the county's EAP program and what's available to them. Here's a few other, I called this budgetary because it's connected, of course, to a budget item, and that is, set aside dollars. My recommendation, set aside some dollars to, once you, I'm assuming, have an HR presence back here in the county to pull together some recognition programs for your employees. I also recommend in 2023 a leaders retreat, team building exercises among the elected officials and leaders. And, I put that third bullet here because I heard employees say, post-pandemic, we're ready to come back together, right? We want to be social, bring back the summer picnic, let's have a Veterans Day event, let's do some of those things. People are wanting that again. And then a total rewards exercise in 2023, meaning really communicate with employees and make clear their total package, the benefits of working for the county, which is, I think, something unique and great about working for public sector, right? Retirement plan, your health benefits, all of the good things that come with working in the public sector. Make sure the employees understand the total rewards. So this work study was focused on recruiting and retention, but just by way of course, doing the work, I saw some areas of human resources that need some focus. And those are, I really believe the county could benefit from having a recruiting strategy, having a social media strategy, increasing the consistency around an onboarding experience. So your candidates and your employees are having a consistent, good, meaningful onboarding experience. Compliance and risk mitigation is very important. Manager training, HR technology and recruiting resources is needed. So I was really pleased to see that there is a work plan in place that really aligned to what I am recommending over the next 3 to 5 years. I know things can't be done right away, but these are some of my recommendations. That's a visual of how the HR structure can be. So priorities, just to wrap it up here. So again, calibrate with compensation where appropriate based on the research. Create a task force to go ahead and start a recruiting and social media strategy. Expand your HR support and evolve the HR technology and begin the DEI journey. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about the compensation study.
Thanks very much, Karen. Commissioners, county leaders, appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Mike Verdorn. I've been with Gallagher for about 16 years. Our team, we specialize in doing compensation studies like this in the public sector across the country. So with cities, counties, school districts of that nature, doing this type of research and these recommendations. And as Karen talked about, our study objectives were to kind of focus on one of those pieces separately prior to the identification of it from the employees and everything, but doing a compensation study to say, how do you compare with regards to actual pay, salary ranges, and what are recommendations to develop a new salary structure, and what does it cost to move into a potential new salary structure? So that was our objective. We utilized market data using a custom survey. We need to get some local data as much as possible. We also have a warehouse library of published survey sources that represent both public and private sector, so we can reference those to make sure that we have a comprehensive data source. We collect and analyze those, make comparisons to the market, but we also looked at all the different job descriptions to help the county identify what a framework for the job descriptions via job series, career series, and different levels could look like in the future for what Karen also talked about with kind of that job description recalibration or enhancement in a way, so that we don't have so many different unique job descriptions all over that make it difficult for managing internal equity, but also connecting those jobs to market data and developing a very valid and defensible salary structure. All those pieces do fit together in this sense here. So we'll talk through those different aspects and what we did in those as well. So we reviewed all the current job descriptions, and we know from working with many organizations that all the job descriptions may not be 100% accurate all the time. But what we can guarantee is that they usually describe the essential responsibilities, why those jobs exist, and we can help to group those in a way. Currently, the county had 168 unique job titles that are out there. Many of those might be very repetitive in certain ways, some different titles that are describing very similar aspects. Our approach really is to say, can we put these into different job series, even different job families, and then what are the different classifications within those? What that allows for is to identify these different bodies of work. So we took those 168, we said, hey, there's potentially 27 different job series. That was our initial take on that draft with 105 classifications. Based on the experience that we've tacked in other areas, similar sized counties, somewhere between 80 to about 120 different unique job classes is something that is usually a good fit. Otherwise, they get way too broad where it's very difficult to ascertain what it actually is. If they get the other side, they get very, very specific and way too unique and very difficult to identify what's changed or what's different between this job to that job. So using this approach that's kind of broader job definitions, it streamlines the classifications and identifies those that are performing similar scope and level of work for consistency across the multitude of departments that exist and the different functions. You may have some jobs that exist all across the county operations. Some are going to be unique to different departments with law enforcement or with human services. Those are unique. IT, finance, admin, those other jobs exist in multiple places. It's important to be consistent. Clearly distinguishes job levels and gives those current and future incumbents into the county, say, what's my career path going to be? Where do I go next here? Where does this skill set, where do these knowledges, where does this take me with that journey here? It kind of integrates into a lot of the things that we had on the other side of this study as well. And then as new positions are created, as is going to happen, there's a framework to help guide the hiring managers, department heads, as well as HR to say, where does this go? How do we ensure that we're placing this job in the right classification and having the right salary range for that role as well? It's going to be equitable, but also competitive. So we had those internal hierarchical levels, that kind of a framework for that as well. Those can be used to develop new or change jobs going into the future. That is part of that broader study that would be the next step. We don't know coming into a project like this how many job descriptions, what is it going to be? So it's something that we need to say, it's the next step to say, how do we enhance this and make it applicable and customize it even more for Champaign County? Then we get into, that's where we start, understanding all the jobs, making sure we review those, understand those, then we start collecting the market data. So our approach is we want to make sure that we're collecting data that's as relevant as possible, data that is as applicable to the jobs and as applicable to the area as well. So one thing to state up in front too is that all market data, when you're collecting it, is dated. It is always going to be immediately old once we start getting it and once we start doing the analysis on it, because it's always moving, it's always changing. And this is even a more unique time in my career outside of like the 2008, 2009 time, when all of a sudden we started the study, we were doing this, making adjustments to kind of patchwork, band-aid certain situations, all of that. It's experiencing it across the country. So we're continuously trying to re-update that data. So it does not include all potential recent updates over the last 2 months, but it includes as much recent data as we could possibly find. So we developed a custom survey. We supplemented that market data with published survey sources representing local, regional, national labor markets. We'll talk through that. We've worked with the county to identify peer organizations. We identified 28 comparable peer organizations. That's public sector. Because if we send this survey out to a private sector organizations, they're honestly going to throw in the trash. They're not going to participate. They participate in these other surveys that we purchase. So that's how we get that. So within that, we sent that survey out. And I will be honest with you, during these last 6 months have been an incredibly difficult time in getting participants to participate in surveys. They are surveyed out when it comes to trying to do this type of work. In some of the areas where we have typically 70% response rate, we're getting down to 40% response rate. And it is even different here within this market because it's not a typical practice to do that custom survey in my experience. A lot of that data within the state of Illinois, due to the sunshine laws, they're saying, hey, our jobs are out there. We have that list of titles, we have the list of pay and everything like that. And that's great. We researched that. We tried to use that as much as possible. We got 7 organizations that participated in it, and we were able to find 5 of those additional organizations that had enough information online with job descriptions, job titles that we could be confident that we're matching. Deputy sheriff, I can be confident I'm matching the right level. But if I see an IT technician in a list, I don't know if that IT technician is the same level of job as the job here at Champaign County. I don't feel confident in making that match between that job to that job because honestly, that data may not be relevant for what the job is here. So there's the difficulty that we're getting to. If they have job descriptions online where we connect those dots, we need to make sense. But then again, we're going to come back to what the purpose of all this market data is. The purpose is not to say this job at Champaign County is being paid this, the market's being paid this, we need to make that sure that person's being paid at that level. That's not the purpose of collecting this market data. The purpose is to get this comprehensive view of how the county compares across the different job families, the different the different departments, and as a county as a whole with the market, so that we can use that data on a comprehensive level to recommend a salary structure that has pay ranges of minimums, midpoints, and maximums that allow the county to recruit and retain and hopefully make compensation a more of a non-issue with regards to why people are here or why they leave. So that's our overall goal. So from this, using this as well as the published survey sources, these are 4 of the some of the best published survey sources. We purchase this. We spend a ton of money on purchasing these surveys every year. Willis Towers Watson, Mercer, CompData surveys. They are published at different times during the year. And I'll get into this a little bit about data aging here in a minute. And Economic Research Institute. We utilize those to say, here's an accountant. What's an accountant within this geographic location, within this state? How do we make sure we have that data for all those jobs? So across all of those, we're able to get a good comprehensive data set in order to develop a overall trend, in order to build a framework and a pay structure. Within all of those, each one of those matches that we're making on the custom survey level and the published survey level, they're all going to be in potentially, some are going to be a little bit higher, some are going to be a little bit lower, but overall, we're going to have a good consistent trend of the market in order to make those finalized, very valid and defensible, reasonable calculations and recommendations at the end. One of the things that we get into is regarding the published survey sources. Sometimes there are associations that will do a survey here or a trade group that does a survey here. There are very stringent guidelines in the professional, in our world here about doing these surveys. They should not be a one-time event. The data should not be self-reported like Salary.com was in the past or like Glassdoor is. It's conducted by a neutral third party that is taking that data in, reviewing it, validating the matches and everything, and it reports all of the information and the calculations and adjustments that are being made. The sources, the effective date, testing, accuracy, all of those things go into it. So we need to make sure we have those valid sources in that way. We selected 65 benchmark jobs. I know this is written small, but you have these also in front of you. What we did is we selected these jobs to make sure that we're representing all the various county functions and as many of the levels as we possibly can, kind of in proportion to employee population as well. So they're trying to be representative so we have that small sample size of the county. So within this, listing this, we need to have at least, we want to have at least 30% of the overall job titles represented, and we want to have over 50% of the employee population. And with this, we achieved both because we were able to get market data for 64 of the 65 jobs. Not all of them came in the custom survey, but we were able to partner those with the custom survey and the published data to make sure we have all these. When we're making matches, there is a methodology that goes into it. We want to try to match as close to 80% of that job as possible to make sure that we have the appropriate job content match. We're gathering actual salaries as well as salary ranges. And when we are doing that custom survey side, we do need to follow the Department of Justice Sherman Antitrust requirements that we need to have 5 unique data points in order to summarize the data for that job. That is a reputable, it's a requirement by law that we need to do that. So it's, otherwise it's price fixing, wage fixing, however you want to call that as well. There are 2 adjustments that we make to the market data. One of them is we do need to age that data forward. If you remember what I said at the beginning, immediately when we're collecting this data, all data is dated. It's old. So we need to make sure we're bringing it all to a common date. We aged this all forward to January 2023. The published survey sources are published at different times. We want to make sure that we're pulling that all together to say we're going to age it forward. We utilize an organization called World at Work, which is the Professional Compensation Association. They do like our ongoing training and classes and everything, but they do an annual salary budget survey of thousands of organizations across the country. Say, what are you going to adjust your salary structure by? What are you going to adjust actual pay by in the next year? Then they'll also come back and say, what did you do last year? And so we have those numbers. So we adjusted it by those trends. Now, if we did those trends in February versus doing those trends in August, they were going to be very different at those times. So there's a lot of factors, and we have some adjustments, and if we can go back and we can look at that again. The other part of it, we're looking at geographic cost of labor differentials. Now, for the custom survey, because we're looking at those local comparable organizations, we did not make adjustments. But with the published survey sources, some of them we may have a state of Illinois data cut, a Great Lakes region data cut, a U.S. data cut. We utilize an organization called Economic Research Institute. They collect thousands of survey sources across the country, look at different Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the information to say, here's the cost of labor differential between Champaign and St. Louis, or Champaign and Chicago, Champaign and where I'm from Minneapolis. Like, what is the cost of labor differential? If you're an organization like Caterpillar or that has multiple locations across the country, they're going to use that to say, hey, we're opening up a shop down in Oklahoma, and we have our salary structure based here. What's the cost of labor difference? What do we have to pay the people down there that's different? Is it lower? Is it higher here? What do we have to do? They're going to utilize a similar source, similar methodology. The other factors that we're looking at, sorry, I'm really building up here to the climax, I guess. But we're looking at the 0 to 5% is highly competitive, plus or minus 5% up to 10 is competitive. And then we get into that potentially misaligned or misaligned jobs. But please remember back that we are not doing this in order to say, this job is way below market by 15.4%. We need to adjust that job up by 15.4%. We know that some jobs are going to be lower, some jobs are going to be higher based upon, oops, sorry, hit the button on accident, based on multitude of factors. It could be the fact that that person has been in a job for 30 years. They are going to be more than 15% higher in the market. That's a brand new person in that role. They're going to be probably more than 15% below. But again, using this on a comprehensive level to say, what do we need to do with our pay structures for different functions, different job families? Now, what we found is a little bit different. Now, these numbers did change throughout this because we had the original salary structure prior to some significant pay adjustments, and then we had it after. This is post the recent county pay adjustments as well. So what we're looking at here is 3 different comparisons across the top and then 3 different groups across the bottom. We're looking at the 50th percentile of the market. So within the 50th percentile, that is the middle point. So if you had that list of individuals, 100 of them, it would be point number 50, right in the middle, okay? That is the recommended point in order to build the overall pay structure. So how does the county compare against that? Because if you build the pay structure around the 50th, you can pay below it, bring people to that market rate, and also pay above. That's where over 80% of organizations, public and private, are going to try to fix and target and build pay structures around that. The full market on this here represents all of the survey data, published survey sources, private sector, custom data. All benchmarks, what we looked at is we did split that between the kind of the general government positions and the law enforcement positions as well, because those sometimes have 2 different markets, 2 different trends to them. So overall, in the general government positions, across all those benchmarks, not saying that some positions might be misaligned, but overall, the county is considered highly competitive with regards to base pay. On the full market, on the custom survey side, you can see that for that 50th percentile for all benchmarks, 0.2% behind, 1.1% above for the general government. But with regards to the law enforcement, that's where the significant lapse was. But that's also where recent adjustments have not been made. Okay, so from our recommendation, we want to look at that full market for building a pay structure, especially with regards to the general government. Law enforcement is really the full market. It's going to be the same as the custom survey because it's public sector. But on the general government side, you have multitude of positions that are present in both public sector and private sector organizations that you're going to recruit and retain people from a wider variety of organizations. This is a list of the jobs that had we're more than plus or minus 15% above the market. These are jobs that should have some investigation. There might be a perfectly valid reason for it. Maybe it was like, hey, we're having recruiting issues and we can't hire somebody where we want to pay them. We need to start higher. Or this person's been in that job for 30 years. They are up here. There are 2 brand new people in this role. What does it look like? Okay? So that requires some of that investigation. But again, the new salary structure with the ranges that we're developing and the methodology that we're using that I'll get into in here in a minute will show kind of what we're trying to do is bridge that gap between where jobs currently are to what the pay range should be tied to the market as well. So I talked a little bit about this competitive overall or some misaligned data, and just bringing back that point that the purpose of gathering the market data here is the development of updated salary structure and the costs of moving into that structure, not for the adjustment of individual positions by themselves in isolation of the full analysis. So we developed a salary structure. The methodology that we used is just called a market pricing method. It helps to establish and connect the jobs to it. So what we want to make sure is that the potential range that we're developing encompasses the full market. What are those really the entry level positions? What's the market rate for those? What's the highest level rate that the county has to be competitive at for different level jobs? And then build a structure through that. We identified to say we need to start at this level, and again, calculate using the 50th percentile at the middle point. Utilize 10% differential between those to move those up, and then slot every benchmark job into the salary range that is closest to the market rate. Okay? Then you have to go back through and kind of recalibrate for some internal equity with regards to that, because sometimes you have a supervisor and employee that the pay range might be incredibly close, and they get slotted in the same job. Well, we can't have that. We need to make sure we have some differentiation. So there's a little bit of still kind of nuanced work to do on that piece. But overall, this is what the salary structure itself would look like. So what we're talking about is we need to start it. The lowest market 50th data point that we had was $18.60. The highest market data 50th point that we had was $81.67. The counties was at $16.34 and $80.03. So what we did is we said, here's $18.60, 50th percentile. We're going to put that at the midpoint of grade 1. And then we calculated, looked at different midpoint to midpoint differentials. You know, that would be alleviate to have the right number of grades this way. So we had enough room to slot jobs into and put those in there in the right spot. A 10% differential worked that brings us up to this level that fits all of the potential market rates that the county has for different positions. And all of those are slotted into a job. All jobs are slotted into a pay range where the market 50th most closely aligns. Now those jobs that we did not have market data for, we're slotting those in a correspondence with a job that might be, we know is one level higher, let's put it one level lower. You know, so we're trying to maintain some of the internal equity, but then also let's make sure the current pay range might tie a little bit closely to that as well. So that's where the nuanced work may need to be done, is with those jobs that we just don't have straight market data for. There might have to be some flex and some adaptation on that piece. We looked at 2 different types of salary structure implementation methods. And the reason why we look at these 2 is typically they have this as the lowest cost and the highest cost. One of them is bring to the minimum. You're going to have employees that are below the new pay range minimum. Step 1, move everybody up to that new minimum, at least. Now, that's going to create some pay compression. That's going to kind of, but it is the most cost effective as well. It doesn't factor in any kind of tenure or longevity with the county. The other one is bring to position in the range. And we've done it at different levels where we've kind of capped different levels, but we said, what's the highest level cost that could exist? It's like, bring people into the new structure all the way up to the maximum. If they've been here for 30 years, they're going to be at the new maximum. Now, sometimes that's right or wrong, because you may not want to move into a new structure with that. But it brings all employees within the competitive range, because you're ensuring that you're still moving all the people up to the minimum, but it also factors in the time of position, so it helps to address some of the pay compression issues that was identified as a concern and an issue from employees earlier. Issue is it's the most expensive, and it does bring some people up to the new maximum of the pay range. So these are the costs that are in there. So we did have the box on the top left is the cost for all groups, okay? Then we broke that team into the general government, government services, and law enforcement. You can see that the cost to move into the minimum is low. We have that point, like 0.5% of the payroll for that group, overall current payroll. But then if we're moving people, from our estimation, the highest level cost that would exist is to say we need to move people into their appropriate spot based on how that time that they've been in there. So that would be approximately 6% of payroll for those respective, for the county-wide, as well as the two respective groups, looking at them in isolation. So really the next step within this, as I talked about on the implementation side, is to look at that implementation, identify what the overall budget can be, because those two methods can be adapted and flexed to say, here's what we can do in year one. It may have to be phased in a way. What do we need to do? What are those priority implementations? What is the priority groups that are there? And utilize that for that budgeting purposes, but also look at that new classification structure. That would help to engage with those department heads, engage with that work, to say what are those different types and levels of work that we can update and refine all of that. And then on an ongoing basis is to continuously review for internal equity, make sure the job descriptions are continuously reviewed and updated. It can be easily tied into kind of the performance management process when you're looking at that at employees and managers are looking at every year. We recommend looking at a classification structure framework and doing that work to engage, to say, what is this work? Let's make sure we have this in there, and have those internal hierarchy levels that helps you frame that and manage it going forward. On the salary structure side is to look and make sure you're moving your pay structures by a certain trend every year, but then also make sure you're moving people through those pay ranges so you avoid some of that pay compression, okay? And then looking at doing a salary survey itself every 2, 3, 4 years. So you can kind of recalibrate that framework of the salary structure as well. So you kind of get new market data, get updated, make it a regular occurrence, participation levels typically increase as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
They could answer a few questions if the board has some. I know this is the first time you've seen this information. It was an awful lot to present tonight. Lots of slides and lots of information. So it was put on the agenda basically as a discussion item and a presentation item, and probably will need further discussion by the board to actually make any suggestions for implementation. You'll see my memo has basically summarized what is the current, in addition to what they've presented. These are sort of current things that I've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. And also, I've recommended a year one budgeted items. I know budget is always a point of this. These things are included in your budget at this point that will be hopefully approved this month. So there's a little bit of progression forward in some of these things that can be done already. But there's probably, other things are going to cost more. You want to take a look at those maybe for next year's budget, or make a mid-year adjustment if you decide to do that. So that's where we ended up with this. If you have questions for Karen or Mike, they'd be happy to answer them. Kyle's gone, so go ahead, Jen. Okay.
Sorry, I was kind of reading the memo. Thank you, Gallagher. Is there any questions that the board members have? Ms. Lockton?
I was just curious if with the bring to minimum structure, are there ways to address the salary compression that are agreeable that you found? Like, I know that the company I work for has a model like that, but once you hit the top of that range, there are things like retention bonuses, like, you get a $1,000 bonus at 10 years or something like that. Is that effective in addressing it in what you've studied?
Yeah, that's a great question because, so in the bring to minimum method, I mean, one of the things is like, we're gonna move, I think it was like, there might have been 20 employees that were below, move them up to the minimum. They're gonna come close to some other folks, but maybe they are where they should be in relation to that. That needs to be looked at with regards to the years that they've been in those jobs as well. We've been involved in some projects where basically what a county had done before was have a longevity type plan to say, hey, you've been here for 5 years, you're going to get this additional $500 per year, and we're going to keep giving it to you every year. Then you're here 10 years, and it's like, oh, now we're going to make that 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever it is. In essence, what that's doing is kind of doing the same step structure. And what we're trying to do, we have a step structure that we created with a 40% range spread, and I think that has 16 steps to it. And I didn't put that on there, but I should have put the number of steps on there. But a 40% range spread means a 40% difference between the maximum to the minimum. So you have the different steps to go through there. And our goal is that the steps themselves are somewhere around that 3% per year, which is typically what market increases, salary budget increases would be on an annual basis as well. So we're trying to balance those two things together within there. But if there's other ones, yeah, some of those other plans do exist to say, hey, thank you for being here. Here's this plan. I think that gets into what Karen was talking about too, about some of the employee recognition programs or aspects that can go in there to reward certain pieces that are deemed to be priorities for the county.
I'm just curious about like how to retain people who have hit the top of their range, but there's not necessarily somewhere for them to go above, or they don't want to move up from where they are. Like, how do you incentivize them to stay?
That's a good question. So part of it too, I think, is the explanation of where that rate would place them in relation to the market, because the foundation of this is we're putting that midpoint, that 50th percentile at the middle. So we're saying, here's the progression. Typical, historic, traditional public sector is to say, here's the market rate. We're going to make a step structure that everybody gets to that market rate, and that's the max. This is going more in line with what the private sector does by taking that target rate and putting it at the middle, so you can pay below, at, and above. So part of it is the education, the knowledge to say, this structure was built in this fashion. So if I'm at the max, if I don't want to move to another role or move to a different job, this is what the maximum salary that the county is willing to pay for a role. Now, is there other employee recognition that can be done to say, here's what you do? Those are different aspects. But also what we recommend on an annual basis, the pay structure does need to shift so that your minimum continues to stay competitive. Otherwise, you're not able, whether that's 1% or 1.5% or 2%, it should shift. So if you're at the max, in essence, you would stay at the max as well. So, but there are some other aspects to it, I think, that go beyond into the stuff that Karen was talking about.
Ms. Furtado, Dr. Furtado.
So I have a ton of questions, but I don't want to ask them tonight because I feel like there's a lot of information to digest, and I don't know that it would be beneficial to go through all of them with what we have left on the agenda. So what I wanted to maybe suggest is maybe a good next step would be to come up with some sort of smaller committee. Like, this is a lot to tackle with 22 people. Some sort of smaller committee of the board that has representations from labor, finance. I think there's a lot of somewhat startling implications for finance on this, right? And obviously personnel and policy to sort of wrestle with some of these big questions. Maybe we could invite these good people to come back after we've had a chance to sort of digest. We literally got this today, so to digest it and to have questions. And maybe we've had a good luck lately with these smaller group that have been able to dig in and then bring back that sort of back and forth. That's just my suggestion. I'm not saying I don't think we should answer any other questions today, but I think if I asked all the questions I have right now in my mind today, we'd be here for another hour, and I don't want to be that's not good for anybody, right? Because we still have a full agenda. So that's just my thought.
Anyone else have a suggestion? I think that the ad hoc committee idea would serve us well for this purpose, and maybe a few of us can kind of get together after the meeting and try to figure out how we're going to do that. Want to thank
I
the
would, I would just like to note that our consultants have completed their contract with us in terms of the number of hours and things that they were supposed to put into it. In fact, probably put more in than they were supposed to. So if we want them to do continued work, which they are willing to do, we just need to be aware that we need to pay them for that.
Thank you, Ms. Kleppel. Seeing no other hands up, I think we have some direction offered by Dr. Furtado, and I saw some nodding, not because of nodding in agreement, that is, that we need an ad hoc committee, and so some of us might hang around a little after the meeting. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is very fitting, given what we've just heard, is the monthly HR report. And I'm disappointed to report that we have an incredible number of job openings, including 22 correctional officers. That's correct. That's exactly right. 22 by the list that I was given. 8 court service officers, 4 deputy sheriffs, and an astounding 7 assistant public defenders. And I'm actually in awe, given that we have a law school, although our law school is very good, and I'm sure the graduates can find good positions, but I sure hope that we can find a way to work. And I was reminded during the presentation that we have an agreement with the Economic Development Corporation. Oh, we lost Ms. Kleppel. We have an agreement with Economic Development using some of the ARPA money to recruit for Champaign County. And I think that need to kind of perhaps include some of those folks in on that ad hoc committee. All right. Moving back to the agenda, I'd like to have an omnibus motion for a resolution appointing Andy Graham to Public Aids Appeals Committee, term December 1st, 2022 through November 30th, 2024. Resolution appointing Ryan Elwell to the Zoning Board of Appeals, term 12/1/2022 to November 30th, 2027. Resolution appointing Robert Lee Wood Jr. to Pasodum Fire Protection District, an expired term ending April 30th, 2024. Do I have a motion? Ms. Michaels, second. Ms. Lee Taylor, is that right? Thank Leah. Leah, thank you. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor indicate
Aye.
by aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Applications for appointments. Hang on just a second. I've got for information only. We would need, let's see, I guess we need to move the approval of the 2023 holiday calendar on page 19. Do I, Ms. Furtado, second. Jennifer
second.
Lockshin, thank you. Discussion of the 2023 holiday calendar. I hear some muttering, but I don't know if there's any, no objection. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Approval of the 2023 County Board Calendar of Meetings, which is on page 20 through 2022. discussion of the calendar? Seeing none. We need somebody to make a motion.
So
Um,
moved.
Stan Harper, thank you.
Second, Straub.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you. Jennifer Straub seconds. A discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Monthly report is on page 23. And now comes to the resolution that's incorrectly noted on our agenda items distribution. Resolution designating the Highway Department Conference Room as the Lorraine Cowart Conference Room. I'll read the resolution. Whereas roads, highways, and transportation are vital to the public health, welfare, and economy of civil society, and that roads convey children to school, people to places for employment and commerce, for agricultural work of all kinds, particularly during harvest, for recreation, for emergency services, and to provide reliable routes for conveyance. And whereas Lorraine Cowart was sworn in as a Champaign County board member from 1982 through 1986, and from 1988 to present. And whereas Lorraine Cowart has served on the Highway and Transportation Committee since 1998, has provided leadership as the committee chair since 2000, and whereas under the guidance and leadership of Lorraine Cowart as the Highway and Transportation Committee chair, the Champaign County Highway Department has rebuilt 180 miles of county road and over 100 bridges to provide for the safe and efficient travel of the citizens of Champaign County. Whereas Lorraine Cowart has admirably served the citizens of Champaign County with her full commitment to her responsibilities as a representative of the Champaign County Board District 11, to work in partnership with fellow county board members and officials of Champaign County, and with her full commitment, service, and dedication to the best interests of all people of Champaign County. And whereas Champaign County Board of Champaign County seeks to permanently and publicly recognize the commitment and dedication of Ms. Lorraine Cowart, who continues to diligently serve the citizens of Champaign County as an elected official for more than 3 decades. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the County Board of Champaign County that the Highway Department Conference Room located at 1605 East Main Street, Urbana, Illinois, be named the Lorraine Cowart Conference Room in recognition of the exemplary selflessness in service still being provided by this esteemed elected official, Ms. Lorraine Cowart. Presented, adopted, and approved and recorded this day, 17th of November, Anno Domini 2022. Do we have a motion? I'd like to say that several members of the county board moved approval and second. And I'd like, since Mr. Jeff Blue is here and helped contribute to this resolution, would you like to say something to the resolution?
I don't think anybody was here when I was hired that's sitting in here because Lorraine's not in here. But Lorraine was instrumental in hiring me at the county board. In 2006 to 2008, we built the highway department, and she was instrumental in helping us come up with the funds and the bonding and authorizing and appropriating the funds for that project. And her name is actually on the plaque in the front of the building as chair of the Transportation Committee during construction. So I think it's very appropriate, and I think it's a great idea to have the large conference room dedicated in her name. So I speak with a lot of enthusiasm about doing this. So that's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blue. Your own service has helped the county and in so many ways, and I was pleased to serve on that committee and work with you and the fine staff that you have mentored and coached and oversee. Anyone else? Ms. Michaels?
Very quickly, having served on that committee for over 10 years and serving with and also as vice chair for Ms. Cohort, there is no one more capable to run that committee than she. She definitely deserves this honor, and I really do appreciate that this is being named while she is living. Things don't usually happen this way, and this lady definitely deserves it. We have a wonderful committee. We get a lot of things accomplished, and it's a very open committee where everything is asked of not only Mr. Blue, but Ms. Cohort and everybody on that committee in a very peaceful and very understanding way, so we can get everything going within our county transportation system. So I really appreciate having been with Ms. Cohort probably longer than many of the board members here. And I can appreciate this being done while she is living. So she definitely is a very most important person in my heart on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking. Ms. Michaels. Kyle Patterson, Chair.
I'd like to request that this stay off of the consent agenda in anticipation that Ms. Cohort may be able to attend the county board meeting. I think it would be a good thing to do. And I just have to point out, she was elected in 1982. I was born in 1987.
I'm hearing some chatter saying that some of the folks. Ms. Samantha Carter wishes to speak.
This is very nice that you guys are doing this. I was born in 1980, so that's 40 years that she has been a public servant. Being new on the highway committee, I have called her plenty of times and asked her questions, and she's been so kind and gentle to explain to me the process. And this is beautiful. I appreciate her leadership. I appreciate her wisdom, and I'm thankful to be able to serve with her on the highway committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Eric, did you know? Any others wish to speak? Then it falls to me. I recognize having studied engineering and geology and applied geology and done that type of work for so many years, I recognize how difficult it is. And seeing the apparent ease that Ms. Cohort conducted the meetings and directed the activities speaks not because that job was simple or that it lacks sophistication, but that it underscores the knowledge base, experience, and reason that we all respect Ms. Cohort in chairing that committee. And I think this is a very deserving honor. And we'll go ahead and vote on this. All in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes unanimously, but will be kept off the consent agenda. There is no other business that I am aware of. Under Chair's report, I will only say that it's been a pleasure and and privilege to work with my vice chair, Mr. Brad Pasalacqua, who will likely not continue once the election results are finalized. But I appreciate working with Brad, and because of his respect and professionalism, and I'll miss working with him. And don't forget to do those ice luminaries when the weather turns cold. All right. Designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda are items Roman numeral 7, A, 2, 3, A, B, C. Item A4, A5. I think that's it. Chair?
Thanks, Chris. All right, next we have Justice and Social Service. Leah?
Thank you, Chair Patterson. Our first item is the usual monthly reports. We have probation and court services for September and their third quarter report. Public defender for September and October of 2022. Animal control, October of 2022. Those are all available on each department's webpage. Item B, we have the Rosecrans Reentry Financial Report, excuse me, for September of 2022. That is for information only on page 24. Item C, we have an intergovernmental, or I guess I have to ask for a motion, don't I? Can I get a motion to approve item C1, intergovernmental housing agreement between the Champaign County Sheriff's Department and Kankakee County for the housing of prisoners? Mary King, can I get a second? Oh, I'm going to go with Kyle. Sorry, Beth. Is there any discussion? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I just have one quick question. I think this is best directed at Tammy. Do you think the money that we budgeted in 2023's budget for the out-of-county, because this is upping this by $10 a person per day for the people we put in Kankakee, do you think that what we budgeted will have the capacity, or do you think we're going to have to revisit this in 2023?
In addition to this price increase, I know one of the things that the sheriff's been dealing with is increased costs for medical, pharmaceutical. So it is possible we may have to revisit that.
Are there any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Hello. Sorry, I think like everybody, I'm pretty tired today. I have no other business. There is no chair's report. And for designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda, 8C1 is what I have. Thank you. Back to you, Chair Patterson.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item 9, finance.
Budget transfer BUA 2022 10-10358, Fund 180, General Corporate Department 071, Public Properties 042, Coroner 040, Sheriff 026, County Treasurer 022, County Clerk 023, Recorder 030, Circuit Clerk 041, State's Attorney 025, Supervisor's Assessment 052, Court Services Probation 036, Public Defender 031, Circuit Court 141, State's Attorney Support Enforcement, and 075, General County, amount $206,220. Reason, a board approved transfer is required to cover the FY 2022 ASME contract wage increases in the general fund. Do I have a motion? Beth, sorry, I saw Eric second. Sorry. All the discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Budget Amendment BUA 2022-10-369, Fund 2075, Regional Planning Commission, Department 100, Regional Planning Commission, increased appropriations $30,000, increased revenue $30,000. Reason, to receive the MSC Supportive Housing Transition Funding. Do I have a motion? That time I saw Diane second and Diane first and Kyle second. Discussion. I have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Opposed? Thank you. Seeing none, that carries. Budget Amendment BUA 2022-10513, Fund 2619, Tax Sale Automation, Department 026, County Treasurer, increased appropriations 10,100, increased revenue 10,100. Reason, additional funds required to pay part-time staff through the end of the year. Do I have a motion? Mr. Summers? Jenny, I saw you second. Jenny Luxon, second. Discussion. And I should mention, I did have an opportunity to speak with Treasurer Johnson today, and she sent her apologies. She just had she was unable to attend tonight, but she said she will make sure that she's here for the full board, so if anybody has questions that they want to ask of her at that time. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And that'll keep it off of consent, so if there's questions, that's fine. I think I would have pulled it anyway, so, but yeah, she apologized, and she welcomes questions, she just could not be here tonight. Treasurer's reports are up through April, and I just then also want to acknowledge that the treasurer and the auditor worked really hard with a lot of other departments, coming up with a bunch of policies. So the Champaign County credit card policy is up. Do I have a motion to approve that policy? Beth, do I have a second? Jen Straub. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Ordinance reestablishing and I found out I cannot say this word, indemnity fund. Do I have a motion? Mr. Patterson, I saw Mr. Summers as a second. Discussion, and that discussion will be directed at Tammy if there is any. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Now we have to fund the thing. Budget Amendment BUA 2022-1115, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 075, General County. Increased appropriation $602,780. Increased revenue $0. Reason, reinstatement of the indemnity fund to ensure legal obligations related to this tax sale are met. Do I have a motion? Beth, and then second, Ms. Lakshan. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. If it's okay, I'm going to do 4, 5, and 6 together. Resolution authorizing the cancellation of the appropriate certificate of purchase on a mobile home, permanent parcels number 02001004 and parcel number 249000021 and parcel number 290500024. Do I have a motion? Ms. Michaels, Mr. Esri, second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let me say that again, I heard opposed? Okay, I just heard something. Resolution authorizing the county executive to assign a mobile home tax sale certificate of purchase, permanent parcel number 150250090 and parcel number 300580349. Do I have a motion? Beth. And then Mr. Thorsland, Beth first, Mr. Thorsland as a second. Apparently, if you sit in my peripheral, I see you. And all those in discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Auditor. And the auditor is here if you have any questions about these policies. Champaign County Purchasing Policy, Rules, Regulations, and Procedures for Purchasing. Trying to get these policies kind of more in line with each other. Do I have a motion? Mr. Patterson, second. Mr. Goss, discussion? Seeing none, hopefully, I mean, there's a lot in these, so hopefully you all took the time to dig through them. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next up, Travel and Business Expense Policy. Do I have a motion? Mr. Patterson? Beth, second. Discussion? Jen Straub.
I I'd like to propose that we keep the language that says travel outside of Champaign County, but strike the language that says greater than 75 miles away from employees' principal place of business. I think that in our region, we have a lot of conferences that are multi-day in places like Bloomington. I think it would cause undue stress and undue, I don't know, I guess stress is the word, on our county employees if they have to go back and forth and miss conference activities, if that were the case. So I think that we could just take out
I know the annual assessors conference is in Bloomington, and it starts really early. So, like, I don't know if they'd, like, what you think? Do you?
So just to let you know, Bloomington is about the only city that
Right.
anything occurs in that would be within that 75 miles. Potentially, an exception could be made if a supervisor would sign off for a reason a person would need to go really early or really late, if they needed to spend the night. Otherwise, I will say it's been the practice of people in the county that have these rules with federal government, et cetera, that they drive back and forth.
Sorry, I forgot I was chairing the meeting. I mean, just stone cold forgot. Jen?
Just because I'm not familiar with all of the travel that employees do outside of the county, how often does something like that come up? Is it something other than just that one typically, or?
The
Okay.
next nearest place that people usually go is Springfield, which is over that mileage limit.
If I may, that's loud. Good question. Yeah, I think in practice, what we're saying is if the conference existed during the workday and it wasn't scheduled for the next day, we regard Bloomington as being close enough to drive home and preferred. And then Springfield not. And of course, 75 miles divides those two cities. So it's up to you. We thought it was reasonable. And then the county executive referred to precedent by other government policies.
So, I raised my hand and I called on myself. So I guess my thing is, I don't want to like belabor this point at all, but so if our policy is to pay the IRS GSA per diem per mile, which I believe is 58 cents right now, or something thereabouts. So driving there and back would be $90 anyway. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, are we really saving that much money by making the person drive back and forth?
No,
And that
we're-
means they can't like do any of the like say there's an evening activity. I don't know, maybe assessors kick it and have a cocktail together and do that networking, which I think is actually a pretty important part of conferences. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I guess, like, are we really saving that much money? Or am I just overthinking this way too much?
Yeah, I don't think there'd be a conflict in staying overnight versus getting the reimbursement for the mileage. That would happen in either case. The only question is if the person is at the conference long enough past 5 p.m. that they would be expected to stay overnight. So yeah, if there were sanctioned, scheduled, like a keynote address and a dinner and things like that, that would qualify. Can I read into the record my summary of what the travel and
Sure.
purchase policy has? Yeah, so I'd written an email, so the board is apprised, but so that the public knows what we did. I did say that the auditor's office had worked in tandem with the advice of department heads, IT, and the state's attorney's office to revise the purchasing policy and the travel policy. The former was last updated in 2012, the purchasing policy. The previous travel policy was last updated in 2018. We've incorporated changes that remove ambiguities and update practices that correspond better to changes in the economic and information environment. The most important alterations or additions to the purchasing policy include the alignment of the 3 bid threshold to that of RPC, so that it is now $10,000. the alignment of the responsible bidder threshold to that of all other RFPs, which remain at $30,000 and is regulated at the state level. Third, the addition of diversity as an enhancing consideration for bid choice. Previously, only the localness of vendors was mentioned. The non-conforming purchases report, then CPR, will no longer include used equipment, intergovernmental purchases, or non-negotiable purchases mandated by higher levels of government. And one good example of that would be purchases of used cars by the sheriff. That previously was flagged, and then we saw that it did not make sense to do that since they had gone through a bid process when they were new. And then is simply cleaning up the language, the stripping of obsolete accounting strings that pertain to the AS400, the previous accounting system. So that we don't want to have that in there because you can't fulfill it. And then the three most important alterations or additions to the travel policy include detailed examples of legitimate and disqualified office expenses, the guiding examples for travel times and the reimbursable meals for which they qualify, and the elimination of meals for day travel within Champaign County. The Auditor's Office will schedule training for department heads upon passage of these two policies. In that case, we wind up talking to pretty much anyone who's a fiscal specialist.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Summers.
Just to make sure that I fully understand this, you're saying that if circumstances arise that make it desirable to have the employee stay overnight.
Like inclement weather?
All right, so there is the latitude for the supervisor to authorize that stay.
And we would not regard that as an abrogation of the policy.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Storr.
Thank you. And further clarification, I hope that we can kind of have a broad definition of an evening sort of activity so that, as Dr. Furtado pointed out, and my own experience, evening social activities allow for networking that can turn out to be very important and desirable for people exercising their responsibilities, and I know that you've probably had the same experience.
Absolutely. There were scheduled activities well after 5 p.m. So those would count. I don't think we addressed an exact cutoff. I think that would be a judgment call by the department. If they go past 5 p.m., is the understanding that you ought to be able to mingle and stay overnight.
Ms. Straub, given the discussion, do you want to maintain your request for amendment or do you want to withdraw?
I can withdraw.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Thank you for your work on these. I know it was quite a bit of work and that you had to coordinate with a lot of different departments, so appreciate it a great deal. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next up, resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with City of Champaign and City of Urbana and Champaign County for the Edward Byrne Memorial the Justice Assistance Grant. Do I have a motion? Mr. Esri, second. Ms. Lakshin. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. The County Executive Annual Tax Levy Ordinance. Do I have a motion? Mr. Goss, second. All right, Ms. Michaels. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Point of clarity, on these next four, do I have to keep any of these? I cannot remember off the consent. All of them, right? Okay. So that will be kept off. The next three items as well will be kept off of consent. Annual Budget and Appropriation Ordinance. Do I have a motion? Ms. Taylor, second. Ms. Straub. Any discussion? Seeing none. Annual budget. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. ordinance providing for the issue of not to exceed $20 million general obligation bonds, public safety sales tax, alternate revenue source for the purpose of consolidating the county jail's facilities by constructing an equipment, an addition attached to existing satellite jail, providing for the pledge of certain revenues to the payment of principal and interest on said bonds, and the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay said bonds if the pledge revenues are insufficient to make such payments, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Do I have a motion? Mr. Goss, second. Mr. Patterson, discussion. Mr. Thorsland.
Yeah, you brought it up in caucus, and I'd love to hear Tammy explain the change in our bond rating before we vote on this.
Yeah.
I am happy to report that Moody's has upgraded the county from a AA2 to a AA1 bond rating. And that will apply to these two bond issues.
Thank you, Tammy.
Very good point. Ms. Straub.
I'd just like to, I think on behalf of all of us, thank Tammy and her staff for all her hard work on making this happen.
Any other discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Great. Ordinance providing for the issue of not to exceed $20 million general obligation, general sales tax, alternate revenue source for the purpose of renovating, repairing, and equipment the former County Plaza building for the relocation of various county offices, providing for the pledge of certain revenues to the payment of principal and interest on said bonds, and the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay said bonds if the pledged revenues are insufficient to make payments, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Do I have a motion? Beth, Leah, second. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. I do have one piece of other business. Given, not just for the bonds, but as finance chair, there's been a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of uncertainty, and helping us navigate through all that, and doing so in a way that puts us in a position where we actually got an increase in our bond rating was a Herculean task. And I think we can speak collectively on the board that we genuinely appreciate that. And we wanted to give you, Tammy, a token of our appreciation for the work that you've done to get us to this point. And so we have these little flowers for you. I'm going to let Kyle or somebody else, that's not me, bring them over there. But thank you, and we're going to give you another round of applause.
I had sent, thank you very much, I appreciate this. And this was an accomplishment that really I cannot take all the credit for. We have county department heads, elected officials, the county board, our municipal advisor, Raymond James, the auditor's office, and their staff. Many parties were part of the success of this, but the one thing that I want to really make a point of tonight is that preparing the 2021 budget and financial forecasts were probably two of the hardest things professionally I have ever had to do. And I just want to say that I appreciate the support of this board and the elected officials and the department heads, because when we decided that we just needed to cut revenue streams to be proactive and conservative, the support was there, and it ended up, working out much better than what we had predicted. But that has led to the ability for us to increase our fund balance and capture this bond rating upgrade. So thank you for your support, and also for the support of the elected officials and department heads in the preparation of that budget.
Just my chair's report, to kind of echo what Chris said earlier with his chair's report. I just really appreciate being finance chair for the last 2 years. I genuinely hope I never have to be finance chair of anything again that includes putting $40 million of bonds on the street, getting $40 million in federal funding, and having to navigate a pandemic and also substantive changes to state laws that are seeing almost every revenue source we have moving around
in the last 2 years. Almost every revenue source we had in the last 2 years moved around, and trying to figure out how we navigate that was, and I recognize that it was a lot of work for everybody on this. Like, we had way more special committees. We had way longer meetings. We had way more discussion. We did not always agree. But even when we didn't agree, I appreciate the opinions that all of you brought and the work that all of you put in. I genuinely think that this board should be proud of what we accomplished, because I know sometimes we focus on the negative. We accomplished a lot in the last few years, and it was due to the work and sometimes the messy work of getting things done. And I genuinely think both this county and our community are better off for the work that you did, and I appreciate it a great deal. That said, what's on the consent agenda is finance. A, 1, 2, 3, B, 2, 2, 3, B2, 3A, B, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, C1, 2, D1, and the rest needs to be kept off. Oh, no, I apologize, I was wrong about that. A3 was also kept off. So everything else I just said, but taking A3 off.
All right, thank you. For other business, I guess I just want to acknowledge the members of this committee that are not going to be here next month. I just want to thank you for your service. I think everybody on this board is genuine about improving their community, and I just want to acknowledge your service. Thank you. And with that is 8:16, and we are adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Story.
Yes, just a reminder, looking for volunteers for the ad hoc committee to discuss the human resources and compensation.
All right, it is 8:17, and this meeting's adjourned.